morning. Good, mo- Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please stand. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. We're about to start. Can everybody take their places, please? Good morning for those on the left, those on the right. Please let us stand to acknowledge the arrival of our Deputy Governor General.
Thank you. Good morning. Please be seated. Your Honor, Mrs. Hyletta Liebert, Deputy Governor General of Nevis, the Honorable Curtis Maynard, Minister of Public Infrastructure, Energy and Utilities, Domestic Transportation, Information, Communication and Technology, the Honorable Mark Brantley, Leader of the Opposition in the National Assembly, Premier of Nevis, and Minister of Utilities and Energy, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, Member of the Opposition in the National Assembly, Deputy Premier and Member of Agriculture, Lands, Natural Resources, Fisheries, Cooperatives, Culture and Housing, the Honourable Spencer Brand, Minister of Communications, Works, Water Services, Physical Planning and Environment, Post, Labour and Disaster Management, the Honourable Troy Liebert, Senator with Ministerial Responsibility for Education, Information Technology, Library Services, Youth and Sports, the Honourable Mervyn Janelle Nisbet, Senator with Ministerial Responsibility for Health, Gender Affairs and Social Empowerment, Mr. Stedman Truss, Cabinet Secretary of the Nevis Island Administration and Special Advisor to the Premier, Mrs. Helen Lewis, Legal Advisor, the Honourable Janice Danielle Hodge, Member of the Opposition in the Nevis Island Assembly, the Honourable Ruben Merkman, Island Commissioner from St. Eustatius, representatives of regional organizations, including the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, CARICOM, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, Mr. Wakely Daniel, Permanent Secretary in the Premier's Ministry, other Permanent Secretaries in the Nevis Island Administration, other senior civil servants in the Nevis Island Administration, esteemed partners, distinguished presenters, panelists, delegates, members of the media, and volunteers. Good morning and welcome to the Island Geothermal Forum here in Nevis. It's my pleasure to be here with you. My name is James Ellsmore. I am the CEO of Island Innovation, and I'm honored to be with you for this gathering today. What you see here today in the room represents months of collaboration, bringing together expertise from across the Caribbean and around the world with development partners, private sector leaders, and government representatives. In preparation for this event, just 2 weeks ago, I was on the island of São Miguel in the Azores in Portugal, which already has 50% of its electricity coming from geothermal, and further exploratory drilling is happening. Bringing experts from islands like this that already have the experience and understand the specifics of island economies is critical for the geothermal transition that is happening in islands like Nevis. At Island Innovation, our role is simple. We create the spaces where the right people can connect, share information, and catalyze action that transforms island communities. And so we're very happy that as part of the Global Sustainable Island Summit in partnership with the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, this event today has been brought here. And I would be amiss without mentioning Nevis's own Eustace Wallace from the Federation's mission to the UN for helping to bring this together, ensuring that the forum in Nevis today has come to fruition. Island innovation exists because we believe that islands don't need to solve these challenges in isolation. The solutions that often already exist need to be connected, adopted, and scaled. So over the years, we've learned that the most impactful developments happen when you bring together people who might not otherwise meet. So today's forum represents a perfect approach. The development in geothermal that is going to be happening here isn't just one project, it's demonstrating the political will necessary from the administration, from the Federation, and the many other partners that are coming together to make this happen. But most importantly, I think this project is going to represent the bold thinking that inspires other islands. And we'll see this from the many islands from around the region and around the world that are joining us here today to share their own knowledge and also learn from what is happening here in St. Kitts and Nevis. These partnerships are really critical for this. So, as Minister Maynard recently told me, this is an opportunity to be part of history, and I really do believe that. This is what we're witnessing here today. So thank you for being part of this important gathering, for bringing together the expertise to bear on the challenges that matter so deeply to island communities, and this island community specifically, because the transportation here that we're going to see today and the knowledge sharing as part of this forum is going to lead in not just to today's events, but the entire week and beyond. Let's make sure that we use this opportunity as a catalyst for the entire week ahead and to ensure that this project is as transformational as we know it will be for St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you very much. Now with that, it's my pleasure to introduce the Honourable Mark Brantley, Premier of Nevis, to deliver the welcome on behalf of the Nevis Island Administration.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to recognize our beloved Deputy Governor General, Her Honor Hailita Liburd. Let me also recognize Minister Conris Maynard and the other ministers of government who are here, and also, of course, members of the Cabinet of the Nevis Island Administration. To all the heads of companies, multilateral organizations, and others who are here, welcome. Welcome to the island of Nevis, as we like to say, the birthplace of hospitality. We are hopeful that during your time here, you will have an opportunity not only to partake of what we have planned for you, but also to experience some of this wonderful island that some of us are privileged to call home. We also, of course, hope that you'll enjoy our sister island of St. Kitts. St. Kitts and Nevis is unique in all of the Caribbean because we're a twin island state. That's not what makes us unique. What makes us unique is our proximity, so that you can literally stay on one and enjoy both. And you're here now, for those of you who are staying on St. Kitts, you would have taken, no doubt, the water taxi over. It's a 5-minute ride. It's much easier to do that here than to get between Antigua and Barbuda or Trinidad and Tobago. So we welcome you to Two Islands, One Paradise, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. It's important that this forum that is focused on the issue of geothermal energy, that this forum is happening on the island of Nevis. It's important because through nature, God's miracles, whatever one would want to say, some may say through sheer luck, we have a considerable geothermal resource on the island of Nevis, a resource which we feel, if harnessed, can be transformative, not only for this island, but for the wider Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and indeed for our sub-region. We are having some very interesting conversations that have been ongoing now for nearly 2 decades. It has been a long road, but I believe we now have the political will. We now have the cooperation between those at the federal level in Bastia and those here on the island of Nevis to bring this dream to reality and to finally harness this resource for the benefit of all of our people. What does harnessing this resource look like? It means, of course, that we get clean, reliable energy. We get energy that we hope is significantly cheaper than the energy that we now consume, which comes from diesel. That we satisfy all of our commitments insofar as the fight against climate change is concerned, and that ultimately we transform our economy powering our economy by energy. I feel that this island in this country can become the Norway of the Caribbean. The difference for us is that we will become that model that is based on renewable energy, clean energy. The other aspect of this transformation has to do with the fact that the science is telling us that we have significantly more energy than we can consume. Now, there was a point, I confess, when we saw this as a difficulty. Now we see it as an incredible opportunity. The fact that this island, this country, will have more energy than it can consume means that we have significant quantities of energy that we can sell, that we can use to power various industries, and that we then start to look at downstream uses for this energy. And to put it in context for you, I'm told that St. Kitts and Nevis at peak currently consumes only about 50 megawatts of energy at peak. We're told that geothermal, the potential for geothermal is several multiples of that. In fact, we've seen various estimates. The one I like most is 1,000 megawatts, 1 gigawatt of power. Now, if that is the case, it means, therefore, that we have significant amounts of energy, that we can then start to have a conversation about green hydrogen, about green ammonia, about power to X, as I'm told the experts say. How do we now use that energy to transform this space? Again, because of where we are in the archipelago of islands, we're very close to the Dutch islands, the French islands. I see my brothers are here from St. Martin. We welcome them. We hope to have energy to sell to you soon. We have friends from Saba, Statia, St. Bart's. We have all of these islands, French and Dutch. So we have part of Europe that is very close to us as well. I think the opportunities, ladies and gentlemen, are truly endless. I think this asset that we have and our capacity to market and bring that asset to market is absolutely incredible. St. Kitts is on board with us because St. Kitts obviously wants clean, green energy as well. The federal government is committed to this idea of a sustainable island state, as are we here on the island of Nevis. And I feel that this is a glorious opportunity. So, welcome to Nevis. I believe that I'm down to speak too many times based on my schedule. And so I'm sure you'll have ample opportunity to hear more as we explore, as we discuss, and as we really see how we can harness the expertise in the room, how we can come together as we build out this Caribbean civilization. So thank you very much. Welcome to Nevis, and enjoy your time while you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Premier, for that vision, and I think that the attendance from the neighbouring islands, both today and also for the follow-up forum taking place on Friday on climate finance, shows that interest in collaboration from, as you mentioned, Saba, Statia, St. Martin, and beyond for this kind of project. Now it's my pleasure to welcome and to invite to speak the representative from the Federation, the Honourable Conrad Maynard. As I mentioned, represents energy among various other aspects in his portfolio. So, Minister, thank you very much.
Pleasant good morning to everyone. Please allow me, of course, to recognize the Deputy Governor General, Liebert, Premier Brantley from the Nevis Island Administration, members of his cabinet, who are all here today, all the specially invited guests and visitors to what must be and is one of the most beautiful places in the world, St. Kitts and Nevis. I don't believe I'm biased, am I? I'm not biased. So truly, it is an honor to have you all here today, and I hope that these discussions we will have throughout this forum will lead to the benefits that we all know exist for our federation and for our region. It is truly my pleasure to welcome you here to this very pivotal forum, the Geothermal Forum, where we gathered with a shared purpose to chart the future of geothermal energy in our island nations. Now, today, we stand at a critical crossroads, presented with immense opportunities to harness the unique geothermal potential our islands possess. Now, our location, our geological features, our formations, the natural resources, positions us to be leaders in sustainable energy in the Caribbean, as was mentioned by the Honorable Premier. Looking ahead, geothermal energy is not merely an alternative for us, of an alternative source of power, but rather it is a cornerstone for achieving sustainable development, ensuring energy security, and fostering economic resilience within the OECS region. Now, however, developing geothermal energy is obviously not without its hurdles. We must contend with issues such as the need for strong political will, which I will speak about, access to affordable financing, a relatively low energy demand, and the logistical complexities of islands separated by the Caribbean Sea. So we also face a shortage of human resources equipped with the technical expertise for geothermal development, and an absence and sometimes an inadequate policy framework or frameworks and legislation and regulations to facilitate and govern geothermal projects. So the answer to these challenges lies in innovation. These hurdles must serve as catalysts for innovation and growth. They should compel us to think creatively and act decisively. We must collaborate to develop novel solutions. This involves creating innovative financial instruments, fostering regional cooperation, and exploring alternative end uses for geothermal energy, and also developing new markets. I'm proud to say that here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have already taken significant steps in this direction. For example, the innovative Caribbean Development Bank contingently recoverable grant has enabled St. Kitts and Nevis to advance its geothermal initiatives, serving as a catalyst for progress. If you're unaware, the CDB grant is a grant where the funding was made available, and where the geothermal is successful, it turns into a concessionary loan. Where the drilling is unsuccessful, it turns into a grant. This effectively eliminates the risk associated with first to drill, and this is very, very important to catalyst our progress forward. Additionally, the OECS GeoBuild project demonstrates effective regional collaboration, sourcing high-qualified consultants who assist and train local energy practitioners across various aspects of geothermal development. This capacity-building effort is vital for empowering our local expertise and ensuring the sustainability of this sector. Now, political commitment has also been demonstrated through tangible actions. As the Prime Minister would say, and I think the Premier would say, if there is one issue where there is absolutely no daylight between the leader of the opposition, Premier Brantley, and the Prime Minister of the country, is on geothermal development. A prime example of this was the passing of the resolution on energy, geothermal energy, by the Parliament of St. Kitts and Nevis, the unanimous passing. This resolution signified a unified stance by both the federal government and the Nevis Island administration to pursue geothermal development collaboratively. It also underscores their dedication to ensuring that the benefits of these projects are shared equitably among all citizens and residents of the Federation, fostering social and economic inclusivity. Now, colleagues, another essential aspect of collaboration and market expansion is the interconnection of our island's electrical systems. This is, no doubt, an ambitious undertaking that is necessary to address our low energy demand and to share this resource with our neighboring islands that do not have it, helping to foster regional cooperation. This, however, as you would imagine, requires considerable political capital and financial resources. I'm happy to see other islands represented here showing the will for this interconnection to become a reality. Addressing these challenges, however, calls for innovative solutions. Again, such as novel financial schemes or financing schemes, regional cooperation frameworks, and technical advancements to optimize grid connectivity. Such innovations are crucial to overcoming logistical and resource barriers and unlocking the full regional energy potential. Furthermore, when we think of geothermal energy, many immediately associate it with just electricity generation. While this remains, of course, a vital application, it is only one part of a broader spectrum of possibilities. Geothermal energy can be harnessed, as mentioned by the Premier, for hydrogen production for export, direct applications such as cooling and heating, agricultural processing, and to attract energy-intensive industries to our region, whether it is data mining, for instance, or production of ammonia. We must foster our creativity, explore these diverse end uses, and conduct comprehensive feasibility analysis to determine their viability, unlocking new avenues for economic diversification and sustainable growth. So as I conclude, the journey toward a geothermal-powered future demands resilience, innovation, and regional togetherness. Our collective efforts, drawing on the innovative solutions we've already seen and those yet to be realized, will pave the way for a more sustainable, resilient, and prosperous region. Let us continue to collaborate, innovate, and commit ourselves wholeheartedly to this shared vision. Thank you very much and enjoy the conference.
Good morning, everybody. Firstly, a big thanks to our speakers who started off the day, James Ellsmore, CEO of Island Innovation, the Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, and the Honourable Conras Maynard. My name is Adam O'Callig. I am the Sustainable Economic Development Manager with Island Innovation. I come from Ireland, and it's a pleasure to be here with you this week and today specifically to enjoy the joint island paradise of St. Kitts and Nevis. I think the biggest takeaway that I took from those speeches was the importance of people sharing ideas, coming together to share their lived experiences on their islands, in their companies, in their organizations, and I hope that's something that we can all do today at our tables and throughout the sessions. So just so you know, I'm going to be the moderator for today, so I will be introducing all the sessions. I'll be making sure the stage runs smoothly and making sure that everybody has an enjoyable day. So up first, our panel discussion is going to touch on the topics of regional collaboration and how it is key to overcoming climate vulnerabilities and securing a prosperous future for all. The session is led by the OECS and will highlight the unique opportunities generated by embracing geothermal energy in the Caribbean, and will bring together key stakeholders from across the region to identify pathways for coordinated implementation. To moderate the session, I would like to welcome to the stage Chamberlain Emmanuel, the Head of Environmental Sustainability at the OECS Commission. So please, a big round of applause for Chamberlain Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, and a pleasant good morning to all. Let me also recognize Deputy Governor Liebert, Premier Brantley, and Minister Maynard, who spoke earlier. My name is Chamberlain Emmanuel, as was said, from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. My portfolio handles several issues to do with sustainability, including climate change, but also, very importantly, and relevant for today, sustainable energy. As we're speaking about geothermal energy today, an interesting fact that you may not have realized, that amongst the CARICOM and OECS region, Guadeloupe remains up to now the only member state with functioning functioning power from this resource that we're here to speak about today. However, the second point is that there are 5 states with significant potential, and all are within the OECS subregion. Therefore, you would understand that for the OECS, geothermal energy is a key priority. And so thank you so much, St. Kitts and Nevis and Island Innovation, for convening this forum. And let's get to it. There's a lot to be said. And so let me introduce those who will assist us in navigating this conversation today. Let me first of all welcome Dr. Ernie Stapleton, son of the soil, who we have loaned for a while. He is with the OECS Commission and the project manager of the GeoBuild project. I would also continue to introduce Mr. Dalton Eloy from Commonwealth of Dominica. We have Dr. Shireen Ibrahim from the Caribbean Development Bank. Mr. Philip Julian from Kenesj Green Limited. Ms. Rebecca Fabrizi, UK Special Envoy for Small Island Developing States. And last and certainly not least, we have Honorable Conus Maynard, Minister from St. Kitts and Nevis, and also Chair of the OECS Council of Ministers on Energy. Okay, so if I also, yes, let's leave it there. Okay, great. I will also ask Bobby to occupy the end of the panel, so I don't get in the way. So you can move up a bit. Wonderful. The other thing we have to keep in mind, we have esteemed speakers and 1 hour, which is probably down to 55 minutes at this time, right? So I hope as we go through, we can, in addition to having the contributions, we can have some really robust discussion. To begin, I would like to call upon Dr. Stapleton, Ernie, to just give us an overview of the GeoBuild program that the OECS is leading on, what's the relevance, and to help us set the stage for this conversation.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain, and good morning to all. Good morning to all.
Good morning.
Just like to thank the organizers for having us here at Pinnace Estate to share a bit about what the OECS Commission is doing under what we call the GeoBuild program. The acronym GeoBuild is Geothermal Energy for Capacity Building, for Utilization, Investment, and Local Development. That's what the acronym GeoBuild stands for. And the purpose of this vehicle, this program, this initiative, is to assist member states in advancing their geothermal energy development. And this program actually is an initiative from the Caribbean Development Bank under the GeoSmart initiative, funded by the European Union Caribbean Investment Facility and also funded by the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, to the tune of US $3.1 million or 8.38 million EC dollars. And this is a grant given to the OECS Commission, and this project is established to benefit Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And this vehicle, this initiative, is very important because it has to do with capacity building. And our topic is to look at scaling up geothermal energy in the OECS region. And one of the areas, one of the barriers to scaling up geothermal energy has to do with capacity building. And this vehicle presents a unique approach to doing that. There is what we call a framework agreement, a framework contract, with several specialties in the geothermal space. Because when you look at geothermal energy, it is complex, it is a long haul, it required perseverance, but in the process, there are several barriers to developing geothermal. And these barriers can span from financial, technical, environmental and social. All of these barriers are in place. And one of the barriers to it is limited capacity in the region. And so the geothermal initiative, the GeoBuild program, is set up so that we will have, and we finally have, all the necessary consultancies on board, including, first of all, the public information and communication consultant. And you see a gentleman standing there in the name of Julius Gittens. He is the communication consultant for the OECS Commission as it relates to the GeoBuild program. And we believe that public awareness and information and education is a cross-cutting issue. And so he is with us, and his role will be to educate the region as it relates to geothermal energy. We also have the Regional Capacity Advisory, and we are partnering with the government of New Zealand in establishing a gap analysis and an action plan where the government of New Zealand is working with the OECS Commission to identify those gaps in capacity building in the region and to come up with a specific action to deal with the short-term, medium-term, and long-term capacity gap issue that we would have. We also have another consultancy that deals with the legal and transaction aspect. As you know, geothermal is very involved when it comes to these particular issues. You have documents like the power purchase agreement, the contract, and there are a number of legal issues as you go along the way. And so we have a company that would be assisting the member states, providing the necessary advisory services and technical assistance as they develop their geothermal energy. We also have the Regional Environmental and Social Advisory, deal with environmental issues, the Regional Engineering and Technical Advisory, and the Regional Economic Advisory. Economic has become a very important aspect of the geothermal space in the OECS because the member states are now transitioning their economies into a new era, a new phase where they are relying on renewable energy, and geothermal energy is one such aspect of that development. To conclude my pitch, I would like to show you, for example, one of the things that we are looking at. At the recent Council of Ministers of Energy meeting, the Ministers of Energy have decided to look into the possibility of having a geothermal drill rig for the region, for the OECS region. And one of the consultancies have been given that task to look into the possibility of the concept or the model of having one drill rig that can be used to help member states in leapfrogging their geothermal development. As you know, drilling is a very important part of geothermal. You're not just drilling to find the energy, but you also have to drill to expand your capacity. For example, Dominica is doing 10 megawatt, but we know that Dominica would go beyond the 10 megawatt. Nevis might be fortunate to get their 30 megawatt, but we also, based on what we have been hearing, that Nevis would be going beyond the 30 megawatt. So drilling is a very important aspect. These wells have to be maintained, and so now and in the future, drilling will be an aspect. And so we have one of our consultants who will be looking into the possibility, all the options, so that we can report to the Council of Ministers of Energy to see if this is a possibility indeed. I'll stop there for now because we only have 1 hour, but this is what the geothermal energy is all about, and this is what the capacity building program, the GeoBuild program, is all about, as a means to advance geothermal energy and to remove, help remove that barrier of limited capacity within the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Stapleton, for giving us this overview of the GeoBuild program at the OECS Commission. Well, 2025 is slated to be a transformational year where we should be moving from 1 to 2 OECS member states with active geothermal energy production. And so I want to invite at this time Dalton from the Dominica Geothermal Energy Company to give us a bit of a state of play and some of the lessons and especially maybe considerations for scaling regionally. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, my name is Dalton Elwa, not Eloy. It's okay. Oh, perfect. Okay, so introduced already, but I'm the safeguards lead in the DGDC, Dominica Geothermal Development Company Limited. And we are the grantor's representative in a concession agreement between the government of Dominica and the developer who's here now, Ormat Technologies, the Geothermal Power Company of Dominica Limited. And so I'm just here to give you an update on the progress of our project. We are scheduled for completion at the end of the year, commissioning, and it's going to be a huge milestone because we've been in geothermal for the last, in terms of active pursuit of that project for the last 14 years in earnest. We did exploration drilling in 2011. We had 3 successful exploration wells, slim hole wells. Then we proceeded to production drilling, and then we had a successful production well, and then we had the challenges of development. That is where between 2014, then we did another campaign of drilling in 2022. Drilling company is also here. And so we have been pushing this, and part of the push to share information and experience is that we had a few challenges along the way, but the other islands who are pursuing this can look at our experience, the lessons learned, and so we are actively sharing information in the spirit of this discussion today. So you can see it's transformational for Dominica because we have a peak demand of 20 megawatt, and we're pursuing a 10 megawatt power plant. So even a bigger impact in terms of our base load, which is less than 20 megawatt. So geothermal, 10 megawatt of geothermal is going to be very, very high in terms of a generation impact. We also help. It also helps that it reduces our carbon emissions. Similar to Nevis, we have a 70 to 75% diesel generation ongoing right now, which isn't really good. And of course, it's going to reduce the cost of energy, stabilize the cost as well, because when you have market fluctuations from wars and from uncertainties, then geothermal will help to minimize these impacts. And so we have been able to push this project forward with these goals into justification of the project. We have proven the resource. As you can see, it's a really good resource. And of course, we have a high capacity, and in the same spirit of what Nevis, the Premier spoke of, we do have the capacity that is exceeding the 10 megawatts that we're currently pushing. This is the current initiative, if you see the screens. We've completed the drilling phase. We now have 2 full-size production wells, and part of this project will include another slim hole. One of the slim hole wells was so successful that it has the capacity to add to the production. We had to drill a new injection well. If you're familiar with geothermal process, you will need to inject the fluids that have been extracted. You extract from the reservoir, you use the energy, the heat energy, convert to electricity, but you also responsibly have to re-inject the fluids. That helps maintain your reservoir as well, because if you extract fluids from a source, it's responsible thing in terms of a geothermal process to re-inject. And so it makes it renewable because the heat of that volcanic resource will renew and reheat those fluids. So that's part of it. The power plant project, the 10 megawatt binary cycle, which is being developed by Ormat Technologies, is what is scheduled for December of this year. And we also have a transmission network which was required because the existing grid was unable to handle the 10 megawatts. So we are currently pushing the transmission network. We are doing 33 kV, 69 kV voltages, and additional substations, which you will see. Try to stay within my 10 minutes. Here's a quick recap of the drilling campaign, the production wells that I spoke of, including the one that is going to be used for production. We followed up with production injection. The injection well says unsuccessful. It was not used. It's not being used right now. So we had the second drilling campaign with a new reinjection strategy that had 2 additional wells. So one production from 2014, one from 2022, and one of the SLIMOs will be the production wells and the 2023 injection well. So I spoke of the concession agreement between GPCD, or the Geothermal Power Company of Dominica, which is an Ormat company. And this was signed in 2023 with a 2-year construction period, so we are on schedule to maintain that, and an operation period of 25 years. It's a BOOT, Build, Own, Operate, Transfer arrangement. And of course, the famous December date everyone keeps talking about, but I try not to mention it for bad luck. Okay, so this is where you get a visual of what is going on the ground. A geothermal plant requires an energy conversion area, which is the plant itself. You need that heat, but you also need to reinject. And what you're looking at is the reinjection pipeline construction, where it takes the energy, the fluids, the used fluids, the fluids that heat has been extracted from, back into the reinjection well. So that status was, that picture is from last week. And so this is about 50% complete. Did I go too far? Transmission network, okay, I think I may have to go back. Can I go back? Yes. Oh. Sorry, I'm not sure where to point this. Okay, so we have the transmission network ongoing as well, and that, like I said, was necessary for the uptick of that 10 megawatt of geothermal. And so we are prioritizing the connection of the 33 kV, and so in November 2025, you see the partial completion of the 11 and 33 kV as a priority, so that it will be ready for the uptick of the geothermal power plant. And so by the end of next year, we will have the complete network and an upgraded and more resilient grid, because the underground lines are going to add some resilience. Most of the power plant, most of the transmission network is going to be underground. It's currently under construction. Okay, so this is just an example of a substation for at the hydro plant, where we will have the 33 kV come into the existing grid. So it's an example of how you will have the actual connection between the new transmission network and the existing dominant grid. Basically, the integration of the geothermal plant into that grid. This is the most important and critical substation at Foncole. That actually is the diesel plant in Dominica, the biggest one. So by connecting that diesel plant to the geothermal plant, we are in fact saying this is where, nicely put it, this is where we replace the diesel. I don't want to be that optimistic, because we still will need a little diesel for peaking purposes, but we're going to have a significant reduction of our emissions and our diesel footprint in 7 months. Okay, thank you very much, and I would appreciate your questions. I did have a picture of the well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for Dalton for giving us this overview of Commonwealth of Dominica's progress. We will entertain some questions soon, so you can keep them in mind. We have heard lots of reference to Caribbean Development Bank and the support they've been given to this journey, including being the facilitators of the GeoBuild program at the OECS Commission. So we want to hear more about Caribbean Development Bank, how you see yourself positioned to continue to support geothermal energy development and scaling in the region, and any surprises you may want to share with us. So over to you, Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you so much, Chamberlain. Good morning, everyone. Well, talking about the geothermal energy in general, first I will talk about the CDB funding instruments. We have, of course, we have the GeoSmart initiative, which is CDB through Strategic Asset Partnership mobilizes various kinds of funding resources and grants, like grants, CRGs, contingently recoverable grants, concessional loans, so technical assistance grants for awareness, building capacity, expert advisory services to the government, legal, engineering, and service studies. Investment grant is provided to government for the high-risk test drilling, and contingently recoverable grant, CRG, is provided also to government or private developer for production drilling, which goes into a loan if there is a success in the exploration activities. And of course, concessional loans, this is for production, drilling, and plant constructions. Now, why geothermal energy is a focal point of interest in the Caribbean region? It's clean, it's safe, it doesn't contradict with anything. It's already available with a high potentiality in many parts of the region, like including St. Kitts and Nevis. But it needs a holistic approach. There is some sort of points to be considered here. For example, when we talk about the high potentiality of the geothermal, what about the existing T&D infrastructure? I'm a power engineer in my profession. I mean, this is my field of specialty, but I always look at how suitable the existing infrastructure in the electricity grid in order to handle this kind of huge capacity, how to interconnect, for example, submarine cables. CDB is currently ongoing the development of or procurement of mobilizing a global consultant in order to, in a project or advisory services called, acronym is CREGI-RES, which is the Caribbean Grid Interconnection, Electricity Interconnection, and the Renewable Energy Scaling Up. So this is some sort of a very holistic type of approach for the advisories, and mainly to deliver a roadmap for the whole region, which is not one size fits all, but it's more than a lot of consultations with the key stakeholders, including OECS and CICRI, CARICOM, and all the governments and the SIDS in the Caribbean region for the grid interconnection through submarine cables, wherever it is feasible. St. Kitts and Nevis is placed in the center of this kind of project because the high potentiality through the availability of the abundance of the available geothermal energy or capacity, plus the geographical location among the East Caribbean small SIDS. So this is very important opportunity, but there are many steps to be fulfilled before talking about the full potentiality of the geothermal energy. As I said earlier, like the T&D infrastructure, the interconnection, the energy market which is supposed to be created through this kind of project, how much should be invested, the regulatory framework, how to harmonize policies between the SIDS. So it's one step, but it will lead to a lot of other achievements and hopefully successes. Geothermal drilling in Nevis is one of the major first steps into the development of geothermal energy in the Caribbean region, hopefully successful, and I believe it's going to be. Mainly that we need to to plan what is the size of the power plant, which will come later on, talking about 10 megawatts, 30 megawatts. Okay, what is next? As we all know that the demand supply or the demand for both islands, St. Kitts and Nevis, is very small compared to the expected generation capacity from this type of energy. Therefore, it's important to know what kind or how much size of these plants to be installed and what is next, whether it's going to be an interconnection with the north and south SIDS and create an energy market, whether to, as His Excellency the Nevis Premier mentioned, the production of green hydrogen, green methanol. And there is also an important aspect is the securing the, fulfillment of water security, because in order to go for the hydrogen production, you need to have a water desalination. So this will include the water reservoir or water capacity security for both islands. So it's a big vision, and it will be a game changer economically and from all aspects for St. Kitts and Nevis specifically and for the Caribbean region as a whole. CDB is working very strongly with other multilateral development partners like IDB, and we are already tunneling or getting through with other stakeholders. We have the GCF, the CIF, the UKFCDO, all the global aids and organizations helping and streaming a large amount of money for funding. So funding is very important aspect of the next stage for the geothermal drilling development. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim, for giving us this view of CDB's portfolio and vision in the space. Now we have our next intervention from Mr. Philip Julian, who, strangely enough, Philip, you're from Trinidad and Tobago. What is a Trinbagonian doing on a geothermal stage? Right, oil-rich country. Right, so you are coming from the private sector and from Kenneth J. Green Limited. Try to help us with our confusion here this morning.
Very good. I think I can help with that. So ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am doing a bit of a balancing act with the clicker and my speech, so please bear with me. Remarks. Don't panic, it's only 7 minutes. So thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this prestigious forum. I'd like to focus our energies today, if I can get the first slide up, on the word investment. While we're waiting on what the slide pack is called. It's one of the two on the memory stick. While we're waiting, folks, let's start by addressing the question that I often get asked at these events. Where is the private sector investment? Yeah. We at Kenneth J. Green believe we're in a good place to answer and address this question. Since we are ourselves private sector, we are indigenous to the region, as the chair picked up on, born out of Trinidad and Tobago, and growing into the Caribbean. We've used our experience garnered from Trinidad and Tobago's energy and petrochemical experience and history to originate, develop, structure, and execute renewable energy projects. In other words, we help make energy projects bankable. Yeah. Additionally, we're here in partnership with ANSA McAL. Are there any ANSA McAL reps in the room? Can you show their hands? I know it's been a particularly difficult week for them. They have senior executive meetings going on in other parts of the Caribbean. Because they are also indigenous to the region, they also started in Trinidad and Tobago, and they've already grown throughout the Caribbean. For those of you who don't know, ANSA McAL is a leading, I'm supposed to say the leading regional conglomerate in the Caribbean. And they have, most importantly, appetite and a capability for innovative, new, different investments in the region. Most importantly, one key commonality that our organizations share is one that I believe we share with everyone in this room. It's our interest and our commitment towards the realization of a sustainable future for the Caribbean. It's for that reason that we signed an MOU with Anson McCall during COP28 in Dubai. I think, Honorable Minister, you were there. Where we committed to exploring regional geothermal opportunities in the Caribbean. Today, we're here to share some of the work done in that regard and announce the exciting next step that was recently agreed to by NEVLEC as it pertains to the 20 megawatt Power-to-X project stated in the Energy Development Plan for St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to emphasize and reassure everyone that this 20 megawatts Power-to-X reference to is in addition to the 30 megawatts that is currently being focused on by St. Kitts and Nevis. That first 30 megawatts is sacrosanct and is dedicated to achieving the goal of providing the citizenry of St. Kitts and Nevis with fossil-free, more affordable power. Now, what is Power-to-X exactly? And now I will make it relatable. If we use that definition shared from Trinidad and Tobago's rich oil and gas history, our economy was predicated on the decision to monetize our natural gas to the exportation of natural gas in a gas-to-X conversion manner. Not power-to-X, but gas-to-X. In our case, our X was ammonia and methanol, two transportable and much-needed global commodities. And the rest, as they say, is history. Today, because of the global environmental crisis that we all face, countries with surplus renewable energy, such as St. Kitts, Nevis, and Dominica, let's call that renewable power, have a power-to-X opportunity, to monetize and export their fossil-free power to other parts of the world through a variety of possibilities, including but not limited to ammonia and methanol. Opportunities also exist for enabling power-to-X businesses locally to pursue additional downstream opportunities within their own shores. And I do see the slides are up, but I'll quickly speed through them to catch up. Yes. So let's talk some specifics. Answers asked us to answer the question, what are some of the Power-to-X opportunities that St. Kitts and Nevis have? And NEVLEC from Nevis has asked us to help answer the question, what is the optimal X industry that Nevis should develop as its pilot project? This is a similar question that the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica asked Kenneth J. Green a few years back. It has since led, as the slide will show, to a country assessment report being done for them, an investment framework agreement being signed with Kenneth J. Green, and a pre-feasibility study that Kenneth J. is currently undertaking for a Power-to-X green ammonia project in the northwest of Dominica. So this is all happening. And here is a sneak peek of the roadmap of what Dominica's Power-to-X pathways look like. Note, in addition to green ammonia and its downstream derivatives, there is inclusion of regional grid integration for the possibility of electricity export, much like the Caribbean Development Bank has been championing. So, what could the Power-to-X possibilities look like for St. Kitts and Nevis? Let's take a quick look. To date, there are 4 pathways or opportunities that we have identified for St. Kitts Nevis consideration. The first is similar to what you just saw for Dominica, namely power to ammonia or potentially power to methanol via the production of green hydrogen from the electrolysis of water using electricity derived from your geothermal resources. We see this in a 50 to 100 megawatt range as a reasonable consideration. The second pathway is one where X, very importantly, is not a commodity, but X is a destination. like the nearby ports of St. Kitts, Antigua, and St. Martin, which, as of last month, along with all other ports, face the stark reality of a pending new requirement from the International Maritime Organization, who from next year, will start the process towards incentivizing or penalizing ships to find ports of call that can offer them green power as they dock. The third and fourth pathways identified talk to local opportunities for new industry creation for St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as energy transition and diversification opportunities for its current businesses. These opportunities would require in the range of about 1 to 5 megawatts. For example, green energy powered desalination that was mentioned earlier can attract investors that want a low carbon footprint beverage industry. Anyone knows what Ansimacal does in St. Kitts right now? I'll just leave that there. And existing hotels and food producers can offer their clients a lower carbon footprint destination or product, both of which can attract premiums and, most importantly, investment. So what's next? How do we convert this talk to action? Well, a key next step is to undertake what we call an opportunity framing workshop. And what this essentially means is to get the right stakeholders in the room, put these pathway options in front of them as their inputs, and take them through a structured process that will yield an output that will start to prioritize which project or projects to focus energies on. Pun intended. So I'm pleased to announce that Ansimacal has agreed to sponsor this framing workshop that will be facilitated by Chemistry Green Limited. I'm also pleased to advise that NEVLEC has agreed to participate in the workshop with the goal of conducting the workshop in June in order to help ascertain what that X should be to be pursued for the 20 megawatt Power to X pilot project already declared in their roadmap for success. Ladies and gentlemen, as I close, I wish to emphasize that the size and scale of the transformation and development being described over the past couple of minutes is significant, and it will take substantial effort, but it can be done. We just have to look at Trinidad. But what we also learned in Trinidad is we cannot do it alone. It's going to require all of us working together as private sector, as public sector, closer than ever before. We at Chemistry Green and Ansimacal are committed to do our part from the private sector to help bring us closer together through innovative initiatives such as this workshop and others to help make our sustainable future an investable reality. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip, for clarifying this confusion and presenting some excellent opportunities here. And you said we cannot do it alone. And it's absolutely require partnerships and funding from some of our friends. And one of our key friends in the space has been the UK. And so we would like to hear from the Special Envoy for SIDS, Ingrid Fabrizi, especially probably on what are some of the barriers that you see and some of the opportunities for the UK to continue to partner with the Caribbean.
Thank you. Thanks very much to our moderator and to our hosts for the opportunity to come here. You've blended me with my colleague Ingrid. I'm Rebecca. Ingrid was supposed to be here today, who is our energy expert who's based in our High Commission in Bridgetown, Barbados. And if any of you want to follow up on UK cooperation afterwards, she is the key person to talk to, so come and ask me and I will give you her details. I'm the Special Envoy for SIDS. I'm leading the effort from the United Kingdom to support SIDS resilience and improve resilience of SIDS. So both resilience to climate change and to economic shocks as well. We work a lot on trying to help improve access to finance that we recognize as being very difficult. and economic diversification, and the effectiveness of development financing. And we recognize that energy insecurity is a big problem for nearly all SIDS, not you, but just about all SIDS. And so improving in this area is going to be really important to increase resilience. And most countries in this region are insecure and also have very, very high cost of electricity as well. And also we know that demand for energy globally is really increasing everywhere. There are very energy intensive industries, populations that are developing globally, so really exploiting energy resources that are green is going to be continually important. So I just want to mention 4 main challenges that we see, and I think I might be repeating a little bit, especially your very excellent intervention earlier where you gave a really good list of challenges. But regulatory is a really, really big barrier to the uptake of renewables generally, and we see that in the region there's an absence of some key areas like cost-reflective tariffs, integrated resources and resilience plans. I think we've talked a little bit about that, and having better roadmaps. Creditworthy utilities and permitting. And these are important issues that undermine investor confidence and limit private sector engagement, which is, of course, really, really important. And some countries in the Caribbean are taking steps to improve this. So I don't want to, I'm sure there are some important steps in the countries that are present here today, but some things that we've looked at are the renewable energy regulations and distributed generation frameworks in Barbados. Jamaica has been, I think, the first country in the Caribbean to implement competitive procurement framework for independent power producers. So there are some really important steps going on, and working on that, overcoming this challenge is very important. There are, of course, technical challenges, and I think about half the people here are technical experts, and I am not, so I'm not going to say too much about them. But one thing that we have mentioned is that there is limited capacity to develop technologies and deliver large-scale projects here. And the minister sitting here told me that it's been a sort of generational project getting this geothermal project off the ground here in Nevis. So regional organizations and partners like us, we've been working, supporting countries to work on this. So we've worked with Dominica, and we've been de-risking geothermal exploration in several countries in the region using grant funding. So that's something that we did in Dominica and Montserrat successfully, and also underway in St. Lucia and Grenada as well. So working with partners, including CDB, including the World Bank. And we're working with CRE and the IDB at the moment on regional offshore wind roadmap as well, and a strategy there. So there are efforts in train that are very, very important on grid stability and regional grid integration, clearly very important. Financial, so geothermal has really high startup cost, don't need to tell anybody here. So this, in Dominica, this mix of concessional grant financing and government equity, I think was very, very important. I don't need to go through the figures, but I think the figure I have here is $60 million of public funding and testing, and a similar amount for distribution. So, you know, it's a lot per capita, that's a lot of money. And accessing public funding to de-risk investment is really difficult. Countries in the region have got high debt. It's difficult to get grants, and projects can be quite small, so attracting private investment is difficult. When there are funds available, we get bids which really exceed the amount of money available. So those are some challenges, but you know, there's a lot of commitment to helping to overcome. So we are here as a partner and are interested in working in this area, consider it very important. The European Union as well is a really important bilateral partner here. Development banks are really supporting initiatives, and CARICOM agencies, and I know lots of you are here. And the SIDS countries here are also eligible to access concessional funds like GCF. I think I saw somebody from GCF here as well. These are really important. The regulatory and technical issues can be solved with technical assistance and grant money. These are solvable issues. Financing is difficult. Investment will be really dependent on public funding unless demand can be better aggregated and regional markets better established, which give a return to private investment. And scale is always a problem. So I think that, you know, overcoming this politics is really important, and that's really the fourth challenge, right? So we need like political agreement. The challenge around economies of scale needs collective approaches, so there needs to be political agreement regionally to make sure that those biggest wins can be really achievable. So a politically owned vision for the region would be really helpful. I think CRE has got the mandate from CARICOM for renewable energy and is very well placed to lead development on strategy. But they're quite difficult political questions. I think that looking at how these resource-intensive industries can be attracted here while protecting the important environments here as well is great. But sharing, selling, which countries are really willing to buy, not only to sell energy, these are all things that require some good political discussions. If we're going to rely on public funding, then the pace will be really, really slow. So we see lots of potential. We are really looking forward to continuing to be a partner here and hope that we can work together to overcome these challenges. Thank you.
Rebecca, for giving us this overview, and really also for identifying some of the other partners in the space and in the room who are here with us. Minister, you've heard a lot, and as I invite you to anchor this conversation, Rebecca did mention that one of the key components is the role of policymakers. You are the Energy Minister of the Federation. You are also the Chair of the Council of Ministers of Energy of the GSIS. I have often remarked both to your back and to your face that I think with you as the chair, we really, really have an excellent opportunity to advance this. So over to you for any takeaways from what you have heard.
Thank you. You almost sound like a politician. Pleasant good morning to everyone again. And I want to thank everyone on the panel this morning for their intervention as we look at what is required for scaling up geothermal energy in our region. I first want to say that this time is a critical time for us here, especially in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, because for the first time really, you have tremendous amount of political will to make this a reality. I am Kitty Nevisian, meaning I was born in St. Kitts. My mother is from Nevis. My father is from St. Kitts. My grandfather is from Nevis. My other grandfather is from St. Kitts. I am truly a son of both Nevisian soil and Kittitian soil. However, it is true that we have had some challenges in aligning in terms of our vision going forward when it comes to a number of things, and in particular geothermal. But from when we got into this administration in 2022, at the federal level, we made a conscious decision that we believe that geothermal development is not just in the interest of Nevis or my family in Ramsbury or Gingerland, but also for the family in Sandy Point or St. Paul's on the other end of St. Kitts. And that this is a resource that God has blessed our federation with, and we at the federal level will spare no effort to make sure it is maximized. As a youngster going to school, we were always told that Jamaica had bauxite, Guyana had gold and lumber, Trinidad had oil and natural gas. And they said that St. Kitts and Nevis, well, all we have is our people. We don't have any natural resource. But the time has come where we realize that we now have our own gold, our own bauxite, our own oil and gas, our own lumber. It is renewable energy. And we have an abundant supply of it, and now is the time for us to maximize that. And so it is really our privilege to be a part of this moment in history where we come together truly as one federation to maximize the tremendous potential that geothermal brings to us. But it's not going to be easy, of course, because we are the smallest independent nation in the Western Hemisphere. Thereby, we have the smallest budget in the Western Hemisphere. we do not have the capital ability to invite the best drillers in the world, the best technicians, engineers, and resources in the world. We simply don't. We don't have the fiscal space. And so we need partnership. And St. Kitts and Nevis is not coming with just open hands or open arms. We are doing what we can do with the limited resources that we have. And so that is why forums like these are so very critical. So what are some of the challenges that we need to overcome as we attempt to make St. Kitts and Nevis the beacon, really, of the OECS, the Eastern Caribbean, as we have been from time immemorial? St. Kitts and Nevis is the first place where the Europeans supposedly settled. We were known as the mother colony. St. Kitts and Nevis was the place of the Buckley's Uprising back in 1935, which led to the birth of democracy across the Caribbean. St. Kitts and Nevis is the first place that pioneered the Citizenship by Investment program in this part of the world. So we are accustomed to be first, and we don't want to be or give up that as we expand with our energy, our renewable energy potential. But what are some of the challenges that we face as a small island state? One of them, of course, is the regional execution must begin with legally defined geothermal development frameworks. We are going on what we know, what was there before, and not necessarily sector-specific to geothermal development. Even in terms of the development of the procurement that we're doing for the drilling in Nevis, we have had to, of course, in collaboration with the CDB, redesign and redefine so that we are not as stringent as when it comes to building a building compared to drilling a hole where the success is not guaranteed. And so many Caribbean states continue to advance geothermal projects without sector-specific legislation. So we have to definitely look at that. This, of course, limits what the envoy from the UK was saying, our ability to really formalize concessions, enforce performance obligations, or even manage land access and environmental oversight effectively. So we need to be supporting at the regional level, at the government level, geothermal specific regulations that clearly establishes project phases, rights of access, and penalties for non-performance. Of course, the OECS Commission and SICRI can assist by developing template legislation, supporting technical missions to review outdated frameworks. And finally, legal certainty, as was mentioned, is a precondition for securing private investment and issuing permits and coordinating multi-agency execution. Now, another challenge that we have to overcome is in terms of execution bottlenecks. They are linked to fragmented permitting and a lack of coordinated technical input. Geothermal development is a vast, multifaceted area. And so we need multiple approvals across planning, environment, utilities, energy ministers. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we have two governments that have to coordinate, Nevis Island Administration and the federal government. And so without an integrated approach, timelines will stretch, critical dependencies will then be overlooked. Technical permitting, for instance, must be based on sequential project phases. Look at it from exploration, production, drilling, construction, and commissioning. Each phase, of course, requires tailored review criteria and performance reporting. So needless to say then that the region can benefit from some sort of standardized permitting roadmap so that the OECS states can be guided accordingly. There is something I called the green print, which we are working on. This roadmap, this permitting roadmap, should outline lead agencies at each stage, the documentation requirements, the maximum review periods, the conditions for advancing to the next phase. St. Kitts and Nevis, of course, supports this development of a roadmap through our shared experience and the shared experience of the region. and an alignment with broader energy reforms efforts already underway in the Federation. Now, another critical component, of course, which is needless to say, is financing must respond to the distinct technical stages of geothermal development. It is front-loaded, geothermal development, front-loaded. But as I think somebody mentioned, as soon as we complete the drilling and we declare to the world that there is 3 or 5 viable wells, I could only imagine the race to get in line. But how do we get there? We need the funding. And the challenge, though, is that many facilities either fund the very early stages, a little test well here, a little feasibility study here, but not the middle part where you need the real heavy weight of financing. There is need for the region to ensure that there is dedicated mid-stage financing mechanisms that support pre-feasibility studies, test drilling, production drilling, grid impact assessments, procurement advisory services. The UK envoy mentioned that Jamaica was the first to use a procurement process to get an IPP. I want to congratulate Skelec, for instance, who is presently involved in has commissioned a consulting advisory service to guide in a public procurement for a renewable PV and battery energy storage facility that will go through the rigor of public procurement. So I want to congratulate them for that move as we prepare to bring that type of position forward. Now, in the case of Nevis, the support from the Caribbean Development Bank is critical. I mentioned it before, the contingently recoverable grant, which is an amazing facility. I'll give a story with the CDB giving that particular grant, where if you drill and you find something, then you're ours. If you drill and you don't find something, that is our gift to you. That's basically how it is. But what that means is when I had then discussions with other financiers, other funds around the globe, and I'm sitting in their office, I could have said to them, look, the CDB has already taken away the risk for your money. So you can come on board now. Because if we start to drill and we end up with nothing in the hole, your money is safe. And in that way, we were able to secure even more money than the CDB had originally put up. So this financing mechanism is really a great one and gives us that opportunity to move forward. So in conclusion on this particular point, a regional geothermal execution fund governed by institutions such as the CDB and SICRI could issue milestone-linked grants or concessional loans that match technical progress with capital deployment. And finally, as I close, technical capacity must be embedded within public institutions to support execution continuity. So right now, of course, we do not have the technical expertise when it comes to the complexities surrounding geothermal development. We obviously rely on external consultants to manage geothermal assessments. I mean, we love you. Many of you are here. We want to see you here vacationing, but we also need to build capacity as well because we know that you're going to go back home to your family soon, somewhere else. So we need to develop our capacity internally as well. They help, for instance, with regulatory reviews and legal negotiations. But this has the potential, obviously, to create delays, to increase costs when personnel rotate or contracts expire. So a regional roster, for instance, of vetted experts should be established and linked to an on-demand technical assistance facility that supports ministries and regulators. National energy units should be trained in geothermal project management, such including contract oversight, performance verification, and interagency cooperation. So with those are some of the challenges that we've outlined and we've identified. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here and being part of this process. St. Kitts and Nevis is ready to do business. We're ready again to be at the forefront of this energy transition goal that we have in the OECS. Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you, Minister, for anchoring and having the last word. This is just the start of the conversation. I know you may have wanted to pose some questions, but our time is, we can take, yeah, okay. So it looks like we have some grace, so we can take a couple of questions. Let me make sure I look at both sides of the room. Anybody with a question that you want to pose to the panel, maybe we can take two. So any one of our panelists, anything? Oh, there we go. We have a taker. And please identify yourself so we can follow up with you.
Thank you. I'm Royal Isaac. Just like the minister, St. Kitts Nevis man. It's interesting what I've heard so far in terms of geothermal. My background is finance, but I just keep an eye on development. We have about 6 or so OECS countries fighting to get to the top in terms of geothermal. And so my question is, we have heard about the challenges, the political dynamics that are likely because we've been witnessing them for the last 40 years, so we know the nature of them. Yet we are hearing that funding is a problem. And so what I'm trying to ask, what do you see as the, envision as the archetype in terms of creating geothermal in the region? Do we see it more effective to concentrate on 1 or 2 islands, bearing in mind the efficiency and efficacy, cost and funding being a problem? How do you think we should approach it? 6 islands trying to do their own thing. St. Kitts Nevis got a gigabyte, and we have heard from the Premier. Why not concentrate on St. Kitts Nevis and feed into the others in terms of an efficiency approach? I just throw that out and bear in mind, of course, the politics and the nationalism. I wanted to respond to that.
Thank you. Very, very interesting question there. Let me see who's brave enough to take it.
Sure, I'm brave enough to take anything. So this is how I would say this. The problem that I've noticed is not that there is not financing that exists. And the problem also is not that there are not opportunities that exist. But the pipeline that connects both of them is the problem. So there is ample money in the world to develop the resources we have in the OECS. But all of these things that we've been talking about, getting ourselves ready legislatively, getting ourselves credit-worthy with our utilities, getting our permitting right, will then create an environment that develops this conduit for funding to flow. So we have to focus on ensuring that we become project ready and spend time making sure that we are project ready. I'll give a very small example. I went somewhere and I had some projects in mind for the government that were not yet fully developed. They were just in their conceptual stage. And when I went to the funder at the time, they said to me, "What do you have ready right now?" And immediately, because I was aware of a project that Skellig had, that they had already done all the work, done all the preliminaries, I was able to say, we have this project. They said, okay, 40 million US. But that is only because the project was ready. So I want to encourage us to get our countries to the state where all of the prerequisites that are needed for investors to be interested are put in place, and then the money will flow. That's how I would answer that.
Well, thank you, Minister, and we'll leave that last word from you. And I want to say thank you to all of our panelists, excellent contributions. Thank you to the audience, and we will have the opportunity to continue to dialogue. Thank you so much from the OECS Commission.
Thank you so much to all our speakers. If you can go off the stage to your right there, I know there's a present from the Nevis Island Administration to thank you for speaking and joining us today. Yeah, big round of applause again for our speakers. Thank you very much, everybody. That was a fascinating discussion, and thank you to Emmanuel Chamberlain for leading on it. The biggest thing that I was taking out of it was about the need for capacity building, and again, coming together at fora like this one here to share knowledge and share ideas, and to ultimately come away with, I suppose, potentially a new idea for, again, your company, your organization, or your state. Coming up for our next conversation is going to be how geothermal energy can impact climate resilience and energy security. So this session will be moderated by Dr. Indra Haraksingh, a lecturer in the Department of Physics at the University of the West Indies. I spoke with Indra last night, and I know she's very excited to join us today and to be moderating this session and speaking on another one later on. So if you can all welcome Indra to the stage with a big round of applause, please.
Shall I start now? Yeah. Good morning, honorable ministers and so from St. Kitts and Nevis, honorable guests. I want to say a very special thank you to James for having us all here today. This has been a wonderful, wonderful session so far. From the looks of it, I think we're going to have a great week together. I had been in St. Kitts and Nevis in particular, many years ago, and I remember having such a beautiful time here. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be here once again. And so far, I have been really enjoying the session. It is my pleasure to chair this morning's session, and we are looking at, I've had some little challenges. I forgot my package at home, but anyway, yeah, so oh Lord. That's why I like my written document. Always. I forgot the whole thing at home. Yeah, nonetheless, we're going to have a good time. So, yes, I am pleased to introduce Honorable Minister Spencer Brand, Minister of Communication, Public Works, Water Services, Physical Planning, and Environment. Minister, would you please? Thank you. And now I'd like to invite on stage Dr. Mohammed Rafiq Najdi from SICRI. He's the Executive Director of SICRI. Welcome. Next, Jonathan Kelly he is the Energy Transition Manager at Skillet. Thank you. And Naftali Erar, Project Coordinator from NEVLEC. Welcome. Sure, you can come closer. So what we are going to look at this morning is how geothermal energy can impact climate resilience and energy security. These are things which continuously haunt us in some ways, but are things that we are dealing with on a daily basis. And we want to get some ideas how we are going to manage this. With geothermal energy, you know we are extracting all the time. So one of the good things is that if we extract some of the heat, we're going to have cooling. So that's one of the positive things. So it will reduce the normal global warming. Many of us here in this room and elsewhere know a lot about solar energy and wind energy, but a lot don't know enough about geothermal energy. So at the University of the West Indies, I set up a master's program in renewable energy technology, and I've introduced geothermal energy as one of the courses there in an effort to train many people. We have had MPhils and PhDs, and I had a very good PhD student. He's graduated and gone to the UK now. He's teaching at a university there. So we have done some good research there, but it gives you the MPhil and PhD few numbers. So the master's program, we are training many more students in a shorter space of time. So a lot of people don't have enough knowledge about geothermal energy systems, and that's one of the things we are trying to pay attention to. Training, capacity building is very, very important. And there are many similarities with geothermal exploration as oil and gas exploration, like we have in Trinidad and Tobago. Some of the techniques are the same. So it's very important that while we may not have geothermal energy, that we can actually have knowledge sharing. And in doing so, we can benefit from each other. So I would like to now call upon I would now like to call upon Honorable Minister Spencer Brandt to give us his take on this topic.
Thank you very much, Doc. And let me say a very pleasant good morning to my fellow panelists. Good morning to our various guests, our sponsors. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here on this very illustrious panel to give some insight on how geothermal energy can impact climate resilience and energy security. I want to put that topic on the three subheading. The first would be environmental. And I also want to add economical and social. Those are the three headings which I want to concentrate on. When we look at the environmental benefits, I want us to think about the significant reduction in greenhouse gas emission. I believe that we who are here in the Caribbean recognize that while there are significant greenhouse emissions from the developed countries that is significantly affecting us in this region, we are a very minute contributor to greenhouse gas emission. So I want us to put that and keep that in the back of our minds. I have realized that with geothermal, we will see a 97% less acid rain reduction causing sulfur compound that is being emitted into our atmosphere in this region. While that is a significant number, as I said earlier, we from the Caribbean do not necessarily contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emission. I also realize that with geothermal energy as well, we are expecting to see some 99% less carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere when it comes to the comparison with fossil fuel power. Those are significant numbers in the context of our Caribbean. I believe that this reduction in greenhouse gas emission have some significant benefits to us here. One of which, and I will get to a bit later, one of which would be the benefit of health, from a health perspective. And I would speak a bit more about that a little later. On the environmental benefit, we can see enhancing climate resilience from the benefits of geothermal. We recognize that with the geothermal energy, our region will be able to withstand our energy infrastructure a bit more, meaning that with a geothermal plant in the Caribbean or in these small island developing states, we will not have to be dependent on the importation of fossil fuel for our energy security. So I believe that that would be a significant benefit for us here in the Caribbean. Our environmental preservation, for example, when we consider the footprint of a geothermal plant, which is significantly less than a fossil fuel plant, it will go a long way in helping us to preserve our environment as well. When we compare, for example, hydropower or bioenergy with a geothermal plant, the size is significantly less. I believe as well that the environmental preservation, and again goes back to the health benefit, which I will develop a bit later, we will ensure that we can maintain our critical environment by using geothermal because of the, one, less emission of greenhouse gas, and also the smaller footprint of the geothermal plant. Let us look for a moment on the economic benefits. And all of the Caribbean islands are heavy importers of fossil fuel to power our various economies. Energy cost savings. We have here in the Caribbean a very high dependent on tourism. And here on the island of Nevis, for example, when we speak to potential investors and the need for energy in investing in the island of Nevis or in St. Kitts, the first question that is being asked, how is the sustainability of your energy infrastructure? And sadly, oftentimes, it is not as sustainable because of the cost. So that is an area that I feel that geothermal energy will help us to improve our energy infrastructure here in the Caribbean. We also can see the energy security, and when it comes to price stability, we all know that there are many countries throughout the world that continue to suffer from instability because of either the political landscape, either the interference of economic challenges. There is that instability when it comes to the price of fuel. That price instability will always impact our island because we necessarily do not have any control over it. And I feel that with geothermal, we can put a solid control on our energy security when it comes to pricing. And that, I believe, would add that level of security for these various islands. I will turn very quickly to the option or the possibility of stimulating local economic activities. Again, tourism, one of our main revenue earners. We are not necessarily a heavily manufacturing industry because of the high energy costs. I believe that with geothermal energy and the reduction in the cost of the energy, we will be able to attract more manufacturing industries into these areas that I believe would be able to create more employment for our people. And additionally, that energy stability will be able to entice, I'm going to use that language, entice additional investors to invest in these small island developing states. Let us look very briefly on the social benefits. Socially, I believe that we will be able to see an improvement in the energy access of all of our people. The reality is that because of the cost of electricity, there are many homes who are in the lower income bracket are struggling to, as we would say locally, keep the lights on. And from where I sit, I have seen many families from month to month probably have to decide which one of these bills will they pay this month. Should I pay my electricity bill? Should I pay my water bill? Should I pay my telephone bill? And that is a real concern for us. So I believe that the social benefit will be able to see that our various families would have enough disposable income because of the reduced price in electricity to ensure that they can continue to have a significant standard of living. We can look at the improvement in enhancing community resilience. And I feel that with geothermal energy and the supply of geothermal energy, we can say that we can build a lot more resilience in our various communities. With geothermal energy as well, I feel that we can be in a better position to promote social equity. That again, I feel that once we are able to see a reduction in energy costs, many homes will be able to have the necessary disposable income to, for example, get better health care. They would be able to perhaps have enough disposable income for a higher education, and ensure that as a family they can see an improved standard of living. I want to look as well as improved public health. And I want to put on the improved public health, water security, and food security. Oh, I think I'm running out of time. So I'm going to be very quick with these 2 points. Water security. We all know that because of global warming, that water security is becoming a challenge in these various regions. And we have to get to a point where we have to look very seriously at the possibility of desalination. And we all know that desalination is heavily dependent on energy. With a reduction in the energy costs, I believe that we can see a significant improvement in our water infrastructure, thus improving our agriculture/food security, and thus also improving our health sector. I will stop there for this time because I think that I've run out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister. We'll move quickly over to Dr. Mohammed Rafiq Najdi, and he is the Executive Director of SICRI. Please, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So, funny enough, on the topic of climate resilience and also geothermal energy exploration, the last time I was in St. Kitts and Nevis was approximately 1 year ago, almost 1 year ago, and I wore a different hat. I was the head of the Nature, Climate, and Energy Program at the United Nations Development Program. So I actually came here with a critical focus of climate resilience, biodiversity, resilience, etc. So fast forward just a short 9 months, I'm back here again to talk on the flip side in terms of geothermal energy and particularly climate resilience. And I'm going to just dive in a bit in terms of when we talk about climate resilience, what it is that we're focusing on. And it's really across three particular borders, and it's on focusing on adaptation, so how we respond to the actions, mitigation, which is geothermal, in terms of how we can mitigate or reduce the impact of greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. And tertiary, I also would like to always include advocacy and activism, which goes hand in hand, especially for us in small and developing states. So if we're going to talk about geothermal particularly, we then have to focus on how do we achieve either of these three areas, adaptation, mitigation, or advocacy and activism. So it's usually focused for us in CIS across three particular areas. One, how does it benefit the people? Now, I'm not going to go too far into it because Minister alluded beautifully onto it. So I am giving my time on that, so I'll be a little bit shorter in the answer. But the Minister indicated that we can automatically identify the benefits directly to the communities and to the households, which is extremely important. The second focus is on the impact to the environment. And geothermal is a clean energy pathway. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and to add to that, it is resilient to the storms and hurricanes that we have within our region. So it is the most viable source of renewable energy that we have in the region, and I congratulate the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis for advocating and pushing to work for geothermal exploration as efficiently and responsibly, and for the lack of a better term, as voraciously as they are, because it is necessary. On the third point, is it economically feasible for the region, for the country? And it absolutely is economically feasible. Because, and again, I don't want to allude back into previous panels because it is identified as a source in which not only the benefits towards looking to reduce the country's external shocks to oil and gas fluctuations, it's not also focused on being able to reduce the cost of energy, but it also actually gives additional flexibility to governments and countries because they then gain that fiscal room to be able to then reinvest the savings into additional areas that are necessary. So the cost efficiency is absolutely there. So when we look at the entire gambit of what we would say is climate resilient, geothermal hits every single spot over and over again. And I just want to go back to the point of Minister Maynard when he mentioned earlier, taking it further. So for us at CCRE, obviously, it's nationally supported, but we really want to execute at a regional gambit. So I really appreciate Minister's call for the relationships and collaborations with, calling CCRE to work with the CDB, to work with the OECS Commission, and we're doing that. And we absolutely have to do that because I believe it was Philip who said earlier in the morning that it's no one single entity that can achieve the energy transition, and we all have to be on board, and we all have to agree in the direction that we need to go. So fully endorsed what the Minister would have said, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with our partners. And then in terms of job creation particularly, so I came across the World Bank report just a couple of days ago, and it said that geothermal energy, for every 1 megawatt produced, it creates 34 direct jobs, with actually greater than solar and wind put together. So the substantial benefits of geothermal at the social, the economic, the environmental, and the climate resilience level is extremely viable. And for the lack of a better term, I'm going to say extremely sexy. Because there is a bottom line at the end. So the investments, once the finance is identified, it's the investments on the back end that go directly back into the communities. And that's why it's the most beneficial.
Thank you so much. And the reason why, one of the reasons why it is so important for creating jobs is because of the series of processes we need to go through, different from, say, setting up a solar plant, right? Talking about solar plant, there was this tree, and a lot of solar panels set on the tree. And why they put it on the tree? Well, the tree wanted to become a power plant. I'm sometimes a joker. We will now introduce our next panelist. Yeah. Jonathan, would you like to start?
Hi,
now?
yes, good
Thank
morning.
you.
So the good thing about speaking after Dr. Agee and Minister Brand is there isn't really much else to add without sounding repetitive and probably not saying it as well as they did. But I'll just add one little additional point from the utility perspective. And for well over like half a century here in the St. Kitts and Nevis context and other island utilities, we have been generating electricity that is dependent on a system of imports. One, you're importing energy in the form of fossil fuels. And two, you're importing energy conversion technology in the form of the diesel engines that are required to convert the imported energy to produce electricity. Now, by moving over to geothermal, we are doing that decoupling of removing at least one element of import. So now you're using indigenous energy sources, but then, of course, you still have to import. We do not produce geothermal power plant generating equipment here, so we still have to import that. But as was already said by members of the panel, that we now are decoupling ourselves from the exposure to the volatility of fossil fuel market and the sort of price increases that we have seen historically that have been then impacting our socioeconomic development. We understand that energy is very important for lives and livelihoods and the functioning of that. So being able to provide a very reliable and cost-effective and sustainable energy resource is critical for our continuous sustainable development. And from the perspective of climate change resilience, while some may argue that solar and wind power, coupled with, of course, technologies and energy storage, are almost now able to achieve grid parity and very cost competitive, these are still weather and climate dependent sort of technologies. So when we are seeing every year, starting from the next couple of days, we're going into the hurricane season, and we have seen in several other islands the ravages and the impacts from hurricanes on like solar plants and stuff like that. While there are continuous improvements being made and trying to improve the hurricane rating, for example, for solar plants, we know that sometimes it's just a simple component such as a clamp or a bolt. And then what we have recently learned, I mean, we were recently in a workshop a few weeks ago, my colleague and I, Nelson, we learned that a lot of the times the panels in the solar plant, they stay grounded, they stay connected, but what damages them are flying debris. Something else like a tree, a cow, a container comes flying over and then it wrecks the plant. So then what geothermal does is it presents an actual technology type that is resilient to climate change phenomena. And for those of you who have been to countries such as like Iceland and El Salvador and seen power plants, geothermal power plants in operation, you would understand what this is about. And then finally, the footprint, as was already said before, we are very small, and as we said, the smallest country in the Western Hemisphere. And we only have a certain amount of landmass. We know the landmass is competing for agriculture uses, commercial development, et al. And we understand that for the output equivalent to truly displace diesel power plant, geothermal is the primary and probably the only technology that can move us towards that goal of 100% renewable energy being utilized for electricity generation by the year, let's say, 2035 or thereabout. That would be all for me. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And we are here in Nevis, and I'm going to leave, I've left the last speaker coming from Nevlec on purpose. So this is Naftali Erar, yes?
Yes.
Project Coordinator for Nevlec. Please.
Yes. Good morning, all. Thank you very much for having me. I'm Naftali Erar, Project Coordinator for Nevlec. I must say, pleasant good morning to my fellow panelists, and you have made my job a little easier. I am basically summing up what you guys said. And I will begin by saying, I'll give a definition of what is climate resilience. And one definition of climate resilience is the ability of social, economic, and ecological systems to cope with and recover from climate-related hazards such as floods, droughts, and extreme weather events. With respect to St. Kitts and Nevis, we are located in the hurricane geological zone, which is 5 degrees north, which is between 5 degrees north and 30 degrees north of the equator. And between June and November,
Each year, we have to prepare for the impact of a hurricane or tropical storm, which can lead to climate-related hazards, as mentioned previously. Climate resilience in the context of geothermal energy refers to the ability of geothermal systems to support communities and ecosystems in coping with and adapting climate-related challenges. Geothermal energy can contribute to climate resilience in the following ways. Reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Geothermal energy is a clean, renewable source that can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. St. Kitts and Nevis is ranked as the 180th country that produces 0.01% of the world carbon emission. And we are looking to offset this by reducing our fossil fuel emission from both power plants, that is Skelec and Nevlec. Reliable and flexible energy sources. Geothermal energy provides firm, flexible power generation that can operate continuously, unlike intermittent power sources like wind and solar. This reliability helps stabilize the grid and supports the integration of other renewable energy sources. Decarbonization of heating and cooling. Geothermal heat pumps and district heating system can decarbonize heating and cooling for buildings, campuses, and communities, reducing peak energy demands and improving site resilience. Now, this section, decarbonizing of heating and cooling, as you know, the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis is very much reliant on tourism. We can use geothermal energy for HVAC, for cooling and heating, and as we progress with our geothermal project, we can look to expand. Instead of just power generation, we can go into space cooling to provide cooling for hotels, schools. We have a university on Nevis here that we can utilize the geothermal energy to help cool it, to help reduce their energy consumption and all of that. Local energy production. Geothermal energy can be harnessed locally, reducing dependence on imported fossil fuels and enhancing energy security. This local production is particularly beneficial during global energy market disruptions. And finally, with relation to resilience, economic benefits. The development of geothermal energy can create jobs and stimulate economic growth, providing communities with the resources needed to adapt to and recover from climate-related impacts. To make St. Kitts and Nevis climate resilient on the energy side, we intend to transition from overhead transmission to underground transmission, and the distribution system will be phased in over a number of years. I turn to energy security now. And energy security refers to reliable and uninterrupted availability of energy sources at an affordable price. Now, energy security is crucial for the function of modern economies and the well-being of societies. Key aspects is the availability, ensuring a consistent supply of energy to meet demand. This includes having sufficient energy resources and infrastructure to deliver energy where it's needed. As you know, it was mentioned earlier, we have the potential of at least doing 1 gigawatt of power, but at this time we are looking to go 30 megawatt initially, and then as we grow in our geothermal stage, we intend to go to a maximum of 100 megawatt. That will also lead to power to X, lead to other industry on the island of Nevis, and also to greater extent to St. Kitts. We are looking to interconnect both islands with submarine cables. In the initial phase, we will install a power cable that should transmit minimum 50 megawatt power between both islands. We are looking to have a direct energy mix, which is both wind, solar, and geothermal. Affordability. Keeping energy prices stable and affordable for consumers and businesses. This helps prevent economic disruption and ensure that energy remains accessible to all. Reliability, maintain a resilient energy system that can withstand and quickly recover from disruption, such as natural disasters, cyber attacks, or geopolitical conflicts. Sustainability, transitioning to renewable and clean energy sources to reduce environmental impact and ensure long-term energy security. Putting this in context for St. Kitts and Nevis, one, reduce dependency on imported fossil fuels, Currently, St. Kitts and Nevis rely heavily on imported fossil fuels for electricity generation. Developing geothermal energy can reduce this dependence, enhancing energy security and reducing vulnerability to global fuel price fluctuation. Stable power supply, geothermal power plants have a high capacity factor, meaning they can operate at maximum capacity nearly all the time. This stability ensures a reliable power supply, which is crucial for energy security. And finally, again, economic benefits. The geothermal project in Nevis is expected to generate economic benefits by creating jobs and reducing electricity costs. This can lead to economic growth and improve energy affordability for residents. So we are looking to ensure, as Minister Brand mentioned earlier, to preserve the environment, to provide jobs, and also to ensure that Nevis reduces their not Nevis, but St. Kitts and Nevis reduces their carbon footprint. And we press forward in our geothermal project. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. And we can see clearly that St. Kitts and Nevis will be a fitting example for the rest of us in at least in the OECS islands. We are running out of time, but I really want to give you the opportunity to have maybe 2 questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The last speaker mentioned that in St. Kitts and Nevis, we're looking towards having a mix of geothermal energy and wind. Can you give an idea of the status with regards to solar and wind at this time? Thank you.
Well, at this time, we are in the development stages for solar power in Nevis. We are currently in discussion with our joint venture partner to put down a 10 megawatt solar plant in Nevis. That is still in the pipeline, and we're working towards it. Our existing wind farm at the Madden site, we currently have challenges with it. There are some maintenance issues with it. We are looking to, probably within the next 5 years, look to modernize that plant, because currently we are not getting any form of wind on the grid currently. So at present, last time it was on the grid was in March. They developed some mechanical issues, and they are working on it currently.
Thanks so much. Any other questions? We'll entertain one more. Yes, please. Yeah. And we have to keep it short at this stage.
Hi. Yeah, it's a question for a colleague from Secret. That you were talking in a very compelling way about the financial viability, and of course this issue about creating fiscal space for SIDS is really important, but have you got clever ideas about how to, any innovation in how to meet the funding gap? Because it is really, that is the key issue, is actually getting the funding in at the beginning. Have you got any other ideas beyond what's happening at the moment?
Question. I think that's $1 million question for all of us in the room. So we do know that, especially for geothermal and many renewable energy resources, just the significance of the upfront cost towards investing in it is the issue. What we're doing is we're working with the partners to be able to identify funds to de-risk the investment as much as possible. And I think that that's where we can then leverage the financing that's accessible towards the government at a much more affordable rate. For us within the region, there are several players, as you would know. I think what we're trying to do right now is to find exactly where each and every one of us can actually be able to station ourselves to create that regional pocket of funding that is most significant. And I think that a regional approach is the way to go, because we are extremely slighted by the challenges of scale. Scale is a reality. And I'll give you one particular example for the renewable energy space for us. So I was in Denmark a few months ago looking at offshore wind. And when I stood there at one of the testing plants and I saw a 23 megawatt wind turbine just erected for them to test from Siemens, the sheer size of it, right, it was so daunting to me as somebody who's from the Caribbean, born and bred, that the logistics of being able to install something of that nature is absolutely crazy. It would have to be offshore, and even then, a lot of our smaller islands would really be challenged in terms of being able to expand at that level. I'll go a little bit further. When we met with several of the manufacturers, they said we don't produce anything smaller than a 2 megawatt currently. So I think that just an example in terms of the sort of investments that we need. I know that Minister talked about the green print. There are discussions as well, the establishment of a blue-green bank, and then there's also leveraging as much as we can the vertical funding to GCF and Jeff to be able to support investing on the front end with the gambit of a climate resilient discussion. And I think as much as we've said that we as Caribbean countries do not necessarily impact on the global greenhouse gas emissions, the simple reality is that we in the Caribbean have a responsibility to show the rest of the world that it is achievable to go full net zero. And I think that that is where the GCF and the JEF and the vertical funding and the technical assistance support that we need to de-risk the investments is very important. Because in many times, yes, we may not necessarily move the needle, but we need to show other countries that it is an absolute reality. So I think coming together and focusing on the regional discussion, as I mentioned, for us at SECRE. So what happens next? We want to have geothermal in St. Kitts. We want to see Dominica having geothermal. We want to bring into the mix the green hydrogen. We want to look at decarbonizing a lot of the sectors. But then what next? And I think that being able to have a broader regional discussion, bringing the countries together, is where we might be able to then access the greatest amount of funding. I think that's the best answer I can give. In terms of specifics, we're working in that direction at the moment.
Thank you very much. At this point, I want to bring this to a close, and I want to thank Minister Brandt and the rest of my panelists here for a stimulating discussion, and we have a couple days again where we could continue this discussion. Thank you, audience, for your patience, and happy to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Dr. Indra Haraksingh for that session and all our speakers again. Just to keep everybody in the loop as to the timings today, we're going to switch things up slightly. So instead of taking a break now, we are going to move on to our next panel discussion. So you might be wondering, when do we get our break? We're going to take our break at 12:50. Okay? So our next conversation is, sorry? Our next conversation is going to be about financing the future of geothermal energy, and I would really appreciate if you could give a warm welcome to the stage to Keisha Farnham, Head of Partnerships and Programs for the Caribbean Centre for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency.
Yes, it is a bit of a tongue twister. And Adam has now made us the most hated panel by getting between you and your break, but we promise to be as scintillating as possible. Good morning to everyone. Today's panel discussion, we are going to explore actually what the last question asked, which is financing for geothermal projects in an island setting. The best laid plans are exactly that. Without money and an enabling environment, they're just great plans. In his opening remarks, the Honorable Premier Grantley mentioned that this particular inflection point in Caribbean geothermal history has been 2 decades in the making. And this session will examine the key components necessary to bring geothermal energy projects from concept to reality. Our focus will include a range of funding options available, strategies for effectively managing risk, and some of the innovative financing mechanisms that are currently emerging to support these ventures. We are really fortunate to be joined by an esteemed panel of experts who bring deep experience and practical insights into financing, development, and execution of geothermal projects. Their perspectives will illuminate the opportunities and challenges we face in unlocking geothermal potential for island economies. And I encourage you to listen closely, ask questions, and engage in the conversation as we explore how financial innovation can help power a sustainable energy future. So, without further ado, I would like to invite to the stage the Honorable Mark Brantley, Premier of Nevis Island Administration. Next up, I'd like to invite Francesco De Simone. Am I pronouncing the surname correctly? Perfect. All right, Chief of Operations, Barbados Country Office, the Inter-American Development Bank. Pearl Williams, the Finance and Administration Manager of Skilec. Albert Gordon, the General Manager of NEVLEC. And Kenrick Burke, the Program Specialist, Sustainable Energy, CARICOM Development Fund. Are you guys afraid to sit next to me? All right. In the interest of time and knowing that we're standing between you and your break, we're gonna jump right in. And Honorable Premier, we're gonna start with you. So, as a policymaker, what role do you believe national government should play in de-risking geothermal investments in island economies like Nevis?
Well, I think first of all, the relevance of government is to create the enabling environment, to have events such as this, bring thought leaders together to determine the best way forward. But also I think governments have a capacity to unlock funding, particularly funding for multilateral institutions in a far easier way, I would say, than individuals or corporate entities may have. So what we have tried to do in the context of St. Kitts and Nevis is really to create that enabling environment and to then have something which I think sometimes is overlooked, or perhaps something that is understated, and that is to have the political will to make it happen. I think those of us who are here would all know that this whole geothermal odyssey, as I like to call it, has been going on for 2 decades on the island of Nevis. Along the way, a considerable amount of political capital has been spent. And I think that one could be led to the view that, listen, just stop talking about this geothermal thing. Let's just go and buy some more diesel engines and just stick with what we know. So part of the narrative has to be, from government's point of view, a certain consistency, that these are national objectives. The resource is a national resource. It has to be exploited for the benefit of our people. And the benefits of this type of undertaking, whether it is in the context of climate change, energy resilience, and energy sovereignty, what that means in terms of water, what that means in terms of food, what that means in terms of new jobs, different jobs, transforming the economy. I think that narrative has to be consistent. And the policymakers and the government has to drive, in a large respect, that narrative. I listened to my brother Congress this morning, and he said that on this particular issue, I occupied a unique position of being leader of the opposition nationally. But the Prime Minister and I have said that on this issue we will work together. Why? Because we think that this is a national issue that can only happen if we work together. He can say whatever he wants to say in Bastille. At the end of the day, the resource is in Nevis. I can say whatever I want to say in Nevis, but at the end of the day, I need him to access some multilateral and unlock some multilateral financing. So it's a win-win situation, and one that we feel makes no sense for us to be at loggerheads about. So these are some of the areas. And even here, I think, and let me just say this, I don't want to get into the local politics of it. But what I will say on Nevis is that we've had government has changed from time to time. Thankfully, not too often, but it has changed. We have had, I think, here in Nevis, a change of individuals from time to time. But there has been a certain level of consistency in terms of at least an agreement that this resource should be accessed, should be harnessed for the benefit of our people. We have not always agreed on how, but at least there's been an agreement. And if you want to know if geothermal has resonated with the people of Nevis, I don't know if it still exists, but there used to be actually a bar in the Westbury area called the Geothermal Bar. So when a local person is going to start a business and call it the geothermal bar, it speaks to how the conversation about geothermal has percolated into the consciousness of the community and into the consciousness of our people. So the short answer is, I think government's important to build out the framework, to seed the ground, to make sure that access to multilateral agencies exists, to make the case in organizations like the United Nations and elsewhere, where these conversations are happening. I think that, for me, is what's important. And I end by emphasizing the political will. The governments have to be prepared to spend, and politicians, that political capital in order to get this over the line. And it's not easy. After 20 years here, people say, what geothermal are you talking about? That's not going to happen. Right? I joke all the time and say, when I started to talk about geothermal, I was a young man. I'm not so young anymore. But we have a certain level of momentum now. We have the political will. We have the cooperation that was missing before. And I do feel now we have access to governments and multilateral institutions that are prepared to assist us to achieve the financing, to bring this dream, which has been now a 2-decade-long dream, to reality for the benefit of our people. So right now I feel very confident. I feel very, very confident that we can achieve this very transformative work that we have undertaken. And I was delighted to hear that the OECS has the potential to lead in our region on the specific issue of geothermal energy and geothermal exploration.
I got it. Anecdotally, I was at the energy I was at the OECS Energy Ministers meeting in February, right here in St. Kitts, and I heard the united front on the part of yourself and the Prime Minister of St. Kitts for the first time. And Dr. Mohammed Nangi can attest to this. I literally messaged him immediately and I said, oh my God, Mo, it's finally happening. We have this joint political will that is so critical for taking projects forward. And I remember at that session you said, it doesn't matter which one of us is in power, this project is going to happen. And that was really, really refreshing to hear, as you know, a way of us really propelling ourselves forward. So thank you for that intervention. You did also mention, in terms of being able to leverage opportunities from the multilateral development banks, from the development aid agencies, and I think that segues really well into Francesco's intervention. And so looking at financing and innovative financing opportunities and models and structures, how is the IDB deploying geothermal investment across island nations? And maybe you can give us an idea of what are the next steps in the process.
Very well, thanks a lot. Good morning, everybody. Very nice to meet you. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, Keisha, for the question, which actually I think is quite relevant to what has been discussed up to now and gives me the opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into what is the IDB role, our partnership with the CDB. My colleague Safrine was here until a few moments ago. So we IDB are funding these efforts, both in exploration and development in geothermal, through what we call SEF, the Sustainable Energy Facility. And really our role has been agglomerating resources from a number of different donors. So the core of SEF is through resources provided by the GEF, the GCF, the Climate Investment Funds that the IDB puts together. And then there's a partnership ongoing between IDB and CDB where we have agglomerated and provided these resources that are then implemented through CDB. And then CDB itself has access to additional resources provided by the British government, by the European Union, and there's additional availability of resources from the IRENA and the Abu Dhabi Development Fund. So all of these resources come together through a mix of loans, soft loans mostly, technical assistance resources, so non-reimbursable donations, And then there's the contingent recovery grants, which would have been discussed and mentioned a few times, which I think is absolutely critical to this financing model. The private sector also has the opportunity to invest equity in these projects, by the way. In terms of amounts, what are we talking about concretely? Between the two phases of the CEF, we're now in the second phase. The total resources made available, it's about $220 million, so quite significant. Of these, 123 approximately are loans, about 35 are contingent recovery grants, and the rest is grants, so non-reimbursable resources, which is quite significant. Approximately 47 million of those grants are provided by the British government and the EU. So the interesting, I would say the fascinating part about our work has been this ability and this focus on putting resources together from a variety of entities and people interested in developing geothermal in the region, and I would say quite successfully. You know, in terms of next steps, as would have been mentioned, we're working in 5 islands. I think there was an extensive presentation on Dominica, which is in full development. We are expecting a disbursement of approximately $25 million upcoming for that. And in Nevis, I'm sure it will be mentioned today, but the focus is on the bidding phase, so we're moving forward. In Grenada, there's exploration ongoing, just starting right now, and I understand that that's funding provided from the Italian Ministry of the Environment. St. Lucia is working through the World Bank, so it's with different resources, and yeah, I think, and in St. Vincent, the exploratory phase, which started in 2019, was not as successful, I think, as it was expected, in the sense that the heat was there, but the level of permeability was not what is required. But through CEF and with the CDB, we're exploring supporting the possibility of new technologies that will require a lower amount of megawatts to make the plant viable. So a lot going on, and for us, it's been quite interesting to have this role of putting together resources to make this happen.
Very good. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and if you could give me just a very short comment on how important is political will in your world in terms of financing projects.
Absolutely, it's critical. I've been so my current role is I'm the chief operation of the IDB office in Barbados, from which we also oversee our work with the OACS countries. OACS countries are not members of the IDB, but we work with them through the CDB. And my experience has been overwhelmingly that without that political will in any areas, really, you don't go very far. And what's been quite interesting to hear from me this morning is to see that certainly that is coming together, and it's well aligned, certainly here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah. All right. So we then go to our Pearl in the room. Hi, Pearl. How are you doing? Good to see you again. So Pearl Williams is the Finance and Administration Manager for Skilec. Pearl, from the utilities perspective, what are the major financial constraints you face in investing in geothermal projects, and how are you navigating them?
Thank you. First, let me say, as a utility, we know the benefits of geothermal and renewable energy in general. We see daily, and especially from a finance perspective, the volatility of fossil fuel. In 2020, we were so pleased, I would say, when after COVID, our fuel bill was cut in less than half. And then, within a couple of years, in 2022, we see it doubled the 2019 amounts. So I think, as it pertains to the will to have geothermal and cheaper source of energy, that is really something we are looking forward to. As it pertains financing and what we are doing, we are pleased with the many agencies internationally that are on board to work with us in driving geothermal investment. We are also pleased with the leadership that is being exhibited in the country, really, seeking to move renewable and geothermal forward, and the interest that is there. We are also pleased that there is talk about local participation in projects like these, which gives the potential for the ordinary man to have a stake in something like this. So even now, there is one project that we are working on, and I think our minister is very keen to make sure that as part of the whole project, there is a buy-in stake for locals. So I think one of the things we are good at is being innovative. It is a challenge because we know renewable projects are very capital intensive. And as so many persons were saying, with our small states, our small economy, it is difficult to get that financing and sometimes even to be in a state of readiness where investors will take you seriously. But we are working on this, and with the leadership that we are sure that we will be able to achieve that goal.
Thank you, Pearl. Albert, we move to you swiftly. Albert is the general manager for NEVLEC. And Albert, NEVLEC's journey, what has that looked like in terms of integrating geothermal? And you're smiling because last time I was here, you did an excellent presentation for me. So I know it's been a journey. And so looking at the new energy mix, what that entails, and how you've structured your projects to be financially viable.
Thanks for that. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Keisha, for that question. So NEVLEC's journey, as we have all heard, goes back 2 decades, and I think there are others better able to give the full history. What I will say is, since I've been here, which is not that long, what we've done was to change the approach. I think the initial approach was to look at both islands in isolation. St. Kitts was pursuing its own geothermal project, Nevis was pursuing a project, and the approach that was used by the planners and the developers was to, okay, Nevis's demand is about 10 megawatts, we project a 3% increase, and therefore we're going to design a project to meet 10 megawatts. Having discovered that Nevis essentially has the best geothermal resource in the world that has not yet been developed, and as you heard from the Honorable Premier Minister, the potential could be as much as 1,000 megawatts, 1 gigawatt. The approach we took was, okay, rather than the traditional IRRP approach, which is what was being used, would say, what can we do feasibly and sustainably, and then how do we go find the demand for this? So, we changed the approach. We came up with what we call initially the NICE project, Nevis Island Climate Enhancement Project. And then once we presented that to the federal cabinet, it became the SK NICE project, because we now have both islands immediately buying into the bigger picture. And we do have an overall plan, which is over 500 million, so I'm happy to hear there's more grant. Of course, the other approach we have taken is to move in phases, in stages. So we have done a complete feasibility study for the overall program, and we are going in stages based on the availability of financing, but we are making sure that each phase makes sense. So the initial project that we're implementing now is 30 megawatts, which is to meet the base load demand for both islands, because the other, I think, difference with what was being done before was that the geothermal plant would be cycled. If it's 10 megawatt, the Nevis demand goes down to 6 megawatts in the night, and you don't want to cycle the geothermal project. Also, based on the structure of the contracts, if it's a take or pay or fixed and variable, same thing, then you'll be paying for probably up to 50% more energy than you're actually using. So when somebody said, well, you are paying 15 cents per kilowatt hour, you're actually paying more than 20 cents per kilowatt hour because you're also paying for what you're not taking. So the target is to address the base load on both islands, which means, of course, interconnection. And then we would deal with, because we don't want to cycle the geothermal, then we would complement that with existing wind and some solar, which would meet the intermediate and peak loads. The other thing we considered was resilience. So we've decided for the interconnection, we know we have to go higher voltage because both islands now have 11 kV, which is not adequate. So we have planned 69 kV system, new 69 kV system on each island to be interconnected by submarine cables, and also with enough capacity to allow us to integrate more renewables later on and to extend our connections to other islands so we can export. So we're actually building the grid for the future, which is very critical. And we have agreed to put that on the ground to build resilience, and we heard Jonathan speak to the resilience of the geothermal plant itself. So the plant will be resilient, the grid will be resilient, and so Category 5 hurricane, we could still be able to maintain supply. So we changed the approach. We have so far, thanks to CDB, IDB, GCF, who are all here, we now have over 70 million US dollars committed to the project, and SFD, who is not here as well, thanks to the federal government's effort. And we are actively discussing with CDF, CARICOM Development Fund, and CDB for additional funds to get this initial phase done and to get as much as possible, but there's a minimum that we need to get done. And we are also in direct discussions with GCF for some additional funding as well. And very quickly, because we may not have enough time, you have heard about the CRG, which was very innovative. IDB, CDB, we discussed that. The other thing was we agreed that NEVLEC could drive the project. In some islands, we noticed the utility is left out and only seen as an off-taker. Most of the technical expertise tend to be with the utilities, so we do that. So we have had some innovation with the funding, and we are pursuing a new approach. Actually, now with GCF, we're looking for project-specific accreditation for a component of the project, which would bring funding directly to the project as well. So we're looking at all the possibilities. We have spoken with the World Bank, with other entities. We're getting funding from various sources. So we will continue to do that until we get to our $500 million project.
What I really loved about the approach was that it was phased, but each discrete phase was a complete phase. So you're actually making progress. And not only that, as you go to investors, you're not asking them to buy into the whole thing. They can buy into one phase and then see the results and the impact at the end of that phase, which is very attractive for investors. And then it allows other investors to crowd into as well. So that was really, really innovative in the way that you guys move forward with that. And also just the community buy-in as well, I thought was quite impressive in the way that the project was structured. Kenrick Albert mentioned that they were doing work with you guys, so that segues really nicely into your intervention. So at the CARICOM Development Fund, what supporting initiatives are there for geothermal for its member states, and what funding tools are currently being used or explored?
Sure, thanks for that, Keisha. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thankful for the invitation to be here and to just present what the CARICOM Development Fund is doing. I'll start briefly by giving introduction to what the Caribbean Development Fund is about. So we are basically a treaty-based organization that is set up to provide financial and technical assistance to our member states, which are the 12 member states excluding Bahamas, Haiti, and Montserrat from the CARICOM member states. What we try to do is to leverage our financing through collaboration and efforts to crowd in private sector financing to enable us to provide funding for various projects within the region. We have several funding modalities that we provide funding through. So we have our country assistance program, which we provide funding to member states for doing various projects. And it's through this particular element that we are providing $15 million from our capital fund to Dominica for the development of the geothermal plant there. It's also through this funding we have some conversation that we have ongoing with SINKITS and NEVIS to provide some funding, not only for the geothermal plant, but also for the interconnection between the island. Additionally, we are also seeking some creative ways of trying to crowd in the private sector and even individuals within the region to be able to support the development of RE and geothermal to the region. So we have the Caribbean Community Resilient Fund, and we are also in the process of also launching the Growth and Resilient Fund. These two funds is really seeking to crowd in the private sector by using a bond mechanism where persons can invest or even institutions can invest in these funds, and then these funds will then implement project, whether it's through equity buy-in into those projects or even providing debt to those projects. So that's another way as well too. I think typically when we speak of geothermal, we speak only from the standpoint of electricity generation, but also there's other elements. There is also the direct use, which you can use for agriculture, for tourism as well too. So we also have what we call a credit risk abatement facility. This facility as well can provide a credit risk instrument in the form of a guarantee that allows entities that may want to use some of the waste heat from the geothermal to do agri-drying and so forth. So it expands, the opportunity that these entities may have. So there are several tools that we are working on, or financial instruments that we are working on to kind of broaden and to leverage the financing that we receive. Yep.
Honorable Premier, I want to put you on the spot too as well, and just kind of feed off what Kenrick just talked about in terms of other key critical economic sectors. How do you see geothermal impacting the other critical sectors for NEVIS and SINKITS?
So thank you very much. I think when I talk about transformation, that's exactly what I mean. For a very long time, our country has been heavily dependent on tourism, as most of the Caribbean is heavily dependent on tourism. During COVID, we all know everything shut down. Airports closed. And as government, we saw a level of suffering on this island. People may not grasp the overall impact of tourism to our economies. So yes, we know the hotel workers and the taxi drivers. Those are perhaps the people who are at the forefront. But I'm talking about farmers, fellows who died for lobsters and conch, who couldn't get the usual markets. It had a profound impact across the economy. And I think as government, we took a decision that we wanted, certainly on this island, to diversify the local economy in a significant way. Diversification, of course, takes different forms, different industries. But in my view, what geothermal does and what our renewable energy thrust does is it allows us to transform, not just NEVIS, frankly, it allows us to transform the entire federation of SINKITS and NEVIS. And it has the potential, if we do get into the weeds about exporting energy, to transform some of our neighboring islands as well. But beyond the transformation of the neighboring islands, just focusing on SINKITS and NEVIS, there are so many opportunities that exist. In my brief comments this morning, I mentioned, what I'm told the experts are calling power to X. So there's green hydrogen, there's green ammonia, there is, large data centers that can, willing to be off-takers of large quantities of energy. I had, in fact, just recently a very interesting conversation because
Many of us in this room may not know that the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, has just introduced new rules in relation to ships, and is now going to be levying certain costs, burdens on these ships as a mechanism to force them to, as you know, the shipping industry is one of the top polluters. And so the idea is to force them to use renewables. And it occurred to me that if you had an excess of energy, as the science is telling us that Nevis does, that there's a great potential even to set up ports here purely for refueling. You know, I mean, I can envisage a long line of ships just waiting to come in to refuel, because that then allows them to meet these international standards. And interestingly enough, I'm being told that shipping lanes, for example, in the Middle East or in Asia, who do not have access as readily as we do to this type of renewable energy, that they could then do carbon trading. So very exotic types of new industries and new jobs. And for me, this government that I lead has always been about empowering our people. So a big part of it for me is our youngsters in particular who are going away, who are getting degrees, they're getting their masters and their PhDs, to now say to them, there's no need for you to stay in America or to stay in Canada or the UK. You can actually come back. You can be here, you have good paying jobs, you have a role to play right here on this island. So I love the ideas that I'm hearing from the panelists about a sort of local investment, local people getting involved, because that coincides entirely with our ethos as a government, that we want our local population to be energized. We want, no pun intended, we want our local population to get involved. We want jobs, but new jobs, different jobs. And I'll say one other thing, because while you've asked about economy, one of the difficulties we've had in the Federation has really been, and I think it's a difficulty that most islands have, is this issue of water. You know, we're surrounded by ocean, and so a logical conclusion would be, why not take seawater and through a process of desalination convert it to potable water? But the obstacle there for us has been the cost of electricity. So the power that you need to make that water potable has been an impediment. And some of the costing that we have looked at has really meant that water will be outside the reach of most of us. I'm a firm believer that water is a fundamental human right, access to clean water. And so we have to keep water at a price that is affordable. Geothermal allows us to solve the problem of water. Cheaper, abundant energy now allows us on a wholesale type of approach to give our aquifers, because most of the water in St. Kitts and Nevis is coming from underground aquifers, as we extract water at a pace that is faster than water the aquifers are replenishing, we're now having salt water intrusion, we're having a real difficulty. Desalination, because we're surrounded by ocean, is a logical answer. And I think in St. Martin, Anguilla, and some of those places, desalination is already part of their mix. But imagine if we can move in a wholesale way to that. And because we can now do it with cheap energy. And then if we unlock water, the next logical step as we build out a sustainable island state is agriculture. Farmers need water in order to grow food. And so the possibility of having enough electricity, that we wean ourselves off exogenous shocks, we're no longer concerned, let me not put it that way, that upheavals in other places in the world no longer impact our cost of living because we have insulated ourselves from that. We have a resilient system, as Gordon has pointed out. That's what we intend to build. We wean ourselves off the difficulties we're now having in terms of water. So we're ticking the boxes. Electricity sustainability. We're ticking the box for water sustainability. Water sustainability leads us to food sustainability. The transformation in the economy leads us to jobs and job creation. So I think that the cost and the upfront cost is indeed high. That has been, in my experience, the biggest impediment for the island of Nevis has been not being able to access the capital necessary to get this project going. But I think the benefits from projects like these are undeniable. I don't even want to mention the political capital, regionally and internationally, of transforming your local economy in a way, and your local energy resources in a way that you now become compliant or even exceed what standards are being set by the international community in the context of climate change and our fight against climate change. And I have said to the Prime Minister that I would want certainly for him or whoever is Prime Minister to stand up in the United Nations at some point in time and declare that St. Kitts Nevis is the greenest place on planet Earth. I have the headline already in my mind. I just want somebody to deliver it, and I believe it's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen in short order. We've waited long enough, and I want to thank IDB, I want to thank CDB, I want to thank Green Climate Fund, I want to thank the Saudis, all who have played a role and been there with us. I want to say thank you because it has really been an odyssey. That's the only word I keep coming back to. It has been a real odyssey. It has gone in, and I feel confident that we are now within striking distance.
Thank you for that perfection of a closing, because you've hit all the points that I wanted to bring out. I'm looking to our time management. Do we have time for a question? One question? Okay, so we have time for, oh, there we go. That was quick. All right. Could you state your name and the organization that you represent, please?
Thanks very much, Jwala Rambaran. I'm here as a student of the Island Small Cities Institute, University of Malta, but I'm actually a Trinidadian. My question is, I'm hearing, right, the passion to move forward on the geothermal energy development, but bearing in mind this region is a highly indebted region. Outside of St. Kitts and Nevis, which is one of the only 3 SIDS whose debt to GDP ratio is below 60%. We talk about Dominica, 100% debt to GDP ratio, almost there. Grenada, St. Lucia, somewhere around 75% to GDP. Why it is we're not exploring more innovative financing mechanisms? For example, a debt for renewable energy swap. You have all the players. I'm seeing CDB, IDB, you have the private sector, Kennedy Limited, Answer Makal, you have the sovereigns, you have the UK as a donor. All right? All that's missing is philanthropy. Why is it that we're not thinking through how can we then do something where we fund the geothermal energy development, but also reduce the debt service of these countries? Because if we keep talking about what we're doing, I'm only hearing about more borrowing and borrowing in that context. You have use of this one element, the contingent recoverable grant. That helps in the de-risking. But in the overall context of how you put all the players together and you move forward on a proper funding structure, I think that's what we need to investigate. Debt for renewable energy swaps. Debt for climate resilience to get you to your green port or to get you to your water and your desal. Those are the kind of things we need to start thinking about in a more innovative way. Thank you very much.
I'd like to take that question. Okay.
Can I just answer you quickly and say that some of those ideas are already sort of in train. I think Barbados has done something interesting along those lines, and those conversations are already happening. I think in the region, the problem we've had is really sometimes the human capital, the capacity to put some of those innovative financing mechanisms together. On the issue of debt, I hear that, and I think that the international community has said to us that these are the sort of standards that we ought to adhere to. But part of the difficulty we've had with that debt overhang, not just in the OECS but around the Caribbean, is some of these very issues. We have climate situations and we are constantly being forced to borrow to sometimes replace infrastructure that has been destroyed. We have, in the context of NEVLEC, I think sometimes we average $1 million to $1.5 million US a month in paying for diesel. We are buying very expensive generating sets. I think the last set we bought was, what, almost 20 million EC dollars, 5-6 million US dollars, the last set that we bought. So the truth is that the debt situation that exists, certainly in the OECS, is not removed from some of the very issues that we are discussing. So to put it differently, I think if we can solve the energy problem, if we can, for example, not be paying out the types of money that we're paying out for diesel, for servicing debt in relation to expensive gen sets that we've been forced to buy. That we can now create a new economy, new jobs, new money coming in, new income streams. Then I feel that the debt that we are now complaining about can be resolved. Not immediately, but over time, because you now have new engines, if you will, functioning within the local economy. The current model, I agree with you, is unsustainable, but I think in a way we are investing now in order to solve the very problem that you've described. So I'm not trying to suggest that more innovation will not be necessary. I agree with you that the debt for climate swaps, those are interesting ideas which have been pursued elsewhere and which we should look at. But I think I also see the investment now. If you tell me now we're going to invest $500 million to make St. Kitts and Nevis entirely fossil fuel free in terms of generation of electricity, to bring the cost of electricity down from currently upwards of 40 cents per kilowatt hour to under 11 cents per kilowatt hour, and unlocking that savings to the mom and pop, the single mom, the little business on the corner, that, in my view, is a transformation that we're talking about. And I think that that, in and of itself, is going to have a very positive knock-on effect in terms of our debt and our debt infrastructure. So I see it as win-win-win. It's just for us now to do the necessary and to get this project to where we need it. So I hope that I've partially answered your question. I'm always reluctant to engage with academics because, you know, they're far brighter than we are. But at least I hope I've tried to let you know, at least from our perspective, how we see debt and how we see what we're trying to do. I think we can escape that debt trap by these types of investments. These are the investments which we think are going to pay substantial dividends insofar as the local economy is concerned. I heard somebody say once that the best way out of debt is to grow. You grow yourself out of debt. So that's what we're proposing to do. We want to grow ourselves out of debt. We want to grow the economy to a point where we have streams of income coming in. Debt isn't a problem, you know, your ability to pay the debt is a problem. So if you have streams of income coming in, then you're more than able. And if you grow your GDP, then that percentage of debt to GDP starts to fall. So that at least is a theory, and you can certainly test it in the classroom, see if it works. All right.
Apologies for taking the floor again very quickly. I think the question is quite relevant. I think your answer is on point. As mentioned, I'm based in Barbados. We did fund the Debt for Climate Swap in Barbados, I believe, last year, which is a very, very interesting, fascinating financing tool that can definitely be applied in cases like this. The thing perhaps to keep in mind and to complement your point, Premier, is that that swaps, what they do is really free up resources for governments to use on certain topic areas, and that may not always in itself be sufficient. So what we do see as a positive impact of the CEF that I was describing earlier and other work that we've been doing in the region is this mix of financial instruments, including the CRG, the technical cooperations, the donations, the loans that come with certain level of support from the financial institutions, because those sort of complement, push the issue, and provide a more complete mix of financial resources, in my view.
And just to close off, I mean, the swaps have been considered across the Eastern Caribbean, but one of the factors that becomes a challenge is that the debt is owned by different people at different amounts. And so while it's not impossible, it's not a simple process either. And at the end of the day, it is still a swap. It's not, you've not gotten rid of the debt. You've reallocated the debt, right? And how it works. So those things do need to be taken into consideration. Panel, this was an excellent, excellent, excellent discussion. Thank you so much for your expertise, for your insights. Thank you to the audience for your rapt attention. And we allow you to go to your break.
Hello, everybody. Thanks again to our panel. Just logistics re-break. I would ask that everybody aims to be back in their seats for 1:25. The break is just around the corner where you had your morning snack today, and when you head around that direction, there's a small little table with some produce on it that's made locally here in Nevis. So I would encourage you to check that out. Mr. Pemberton promises me that it's all absolutely delicious. So just to reiterate, 1:25 to be back in your seats, please. Thank you.